Welcome to the den, the Dingus Den.
Welcome to the Dingus Den for a brand new episode of, well, it's actually a new series here called Mutant Club, where we're going to be talking about X-Men related stuff. So where better to start than at the very beginning of where I think X-Men really started gaining big, and that's the beginning of Chris Claremont's epic saga. And to join us here, I have my good friend Ian. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Ready to talk some X-Men after lots of
Yes.
technical difficulties, but that's neither here or there.
Yes.
As we finally are good to talk about some X-Men. We're going to be talking about Giant Size X-Men, and then Uncanny X-Men 94 through 100, which is like the beginnings of like what Claremont wrote. That leads into another big story arc that we'll get into at the end. But lots of fun, exciting stuff, and I hope this is the going to be a very good beginning for just what's hopefully going to be a long running series here, because X-Men content's rich. I've been wanting to get into more X-Men stuff, and so while this sort of follows a still kind of like what Comic Club is, it's going to be like a offshoot of it. It's the Mutant Club, so it'll be a fun time here.
When you first suggested the name Mutant Club, I responded by saying, I'm a mutant and I can change if I have to, I guess. And that is a reference to a show that you probably have no idea what it is. It's called The Red Green Show.
No, I never heard of it.
Yeah.
You know
But
what?
you responded with a GIF uh, of Mystique from X-Men Apocalypse transforming, and that was kind of the perfect GIF because it, her arc throughout that story is that she doesn't want to change. She just wants to stay in her human form. Um, but reading Giant X-Men actually really reminded me of X-Men Apocalypse in the way that they were kind of gathering all these new characters together.
Yeah, that's such a big point there
So
too. Once we get into it,
yeah,
do you have any other thoughts before we get right into Giant Size X-Men?
uh, I have thoughts about Giant Size X-Men.
All right, well, let's just go ahead and get right into it then. As while we're calling this beginning of Chris Claremont's X-Men, what's interesting though is Giant Size X-Men isn't written by Chris Claremont. Funny enough, it is written by Lynn Wein, with David Cockrum being illustrating, and what is this name here? Glynis Wein being the colorist, and then John Costanza being the letterer. All fantastic people here coming together to do make this big issue. If I butcher any names, as usual, I apologize. I usually do. It's kind of my thing. But but yeah. Anyway, Giant Size X Men. We see this new group of X Men being recruited, right? We see Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Storm, Sunfire, Banshee, Colossus, and Thunderbird. They're all brought together, assembled with the task of where they need to find what happened to the original X-Men, because there's this whole event where like oh my god, Cyclops was leading them, and like something happened where like he got injured, couldn't find anyone else, he just barely escaped. So they then travel to the island of Krakoa, of where the island just starts fighting back. But then all of a sudden, they do find the original X-Men. They rescue them. Krakoa then reveals itself as like this monster sort of thing. Gave me Man-Thing vibes, a little bit. Just a lot bigger, obviously. But the heroes get away, thus succeeding in their mission of finding the old X-Men. So, yeah, that's just a very basic overview of all these, of that. So, but yeah, very big start, right? Like, we're introduced to what I'd assume would be several first appearances, and if not several first appearances, very minimal appearances before then. Like Wolverine. Wolverine only had 3 comic appearances before this.
And you went back and read those, right?
Yes, I did.
You said you were gonna? Okay.
I did, and
I did not,
well, only one of the issues
but
kind of
I know who
matters.
Wolverine is. What?
I said only like one of those issues kind of matters, ish, and it's just like seeing how he plays into like fighting the Hulk and like being recruited by this Canadian sort of like CIA or whatever it's called, and so uh, he's essentially like their agent that we then see here. He is recruited by Professor X. He convinces the agency there to let go of him, and thus we have Wolverine
It
here.
wasn't that hard.
It really wasn't that hard to get really anybody here. So, but yeah. What thoughts do you have on this? Did you like it? Do you think it was a good start? What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a very good start. I was actually surprised at how much I liked the writing because, previously we had read Secret Wars,
You did.
and
Go
I
check
thought
that
the
out.
writing, yeah, go check out the video. Uh, it's up to you about whether you want to read Secret Wars, at least the original. But yeah, going back and reading stuff from this long ago, where the writing style and art style, but the writing style was so different.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to, get into. And I actually really enjoyed Len Wein's writing more than Chris Claremont's writing of the other issues that we'll talk about. Like his the narrator part, the narrator
Sure.
boxes, I thought those were pretty poetically written without being, well, like I'll get into Claremont stuff more later, but his stuff is kind of overly melodramatic, and uh, and also the dialogue I thought was really well written.
Yeah.
But the the gathering together, Xavier's recruiting mission at the beginning here, I thought it was really well done. You know, each instance was very unique to each individual. And I also really like that, they were bringing together a more worldly, accurate representation. Well, I don't know about accurate, but at least more worldly representation with the X-Men. Because, the X-Men aren't like, Captain America
Sure.
or something like that, being like an American hero. They're supposed to be more about fighting for the rights of all mutants everywhere. And so I thought it was actually, considering the time that this was written, it was pretty big
Yeah.
to bring in. You're bringing in, well, you got your Canadian, you have a Native American with John Proudstar, African with Aurora Storm, German with Nightcrawler, and a big thing, I think, Russian with Peter. And
Yeah.
what's Peter's code name?
Colossus.
I can't. Colossus. Yes. Because for a great amount of time, especially around then and before, Russia was very much seen as an enemy state, and so to bring, at least, to America, so to bring in all these characters from all these different places, and really, you know, humanize them,
Yeah.
have people connect with them. I thought it was a pretty big move, and well done here. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a fantastic group. Or oh my god, what a fantastic point about this group, right? Um, it's X-Men's always been the whole point about X-Men in the first place, though, was like diversity, right? And that everyone's unique in their own ways. And I think this is even a better way to represent that more so than what the original group did. And so, and plus, um, we still have Cyclops there leading them, keeping them all together, and we see a glimpse
I
of
mean
that here.
that's clear to me.
Right.
It's someone that the fans of the earlier comics,
Yeah.
because they had overall taken a break for 5 years from
Yeah.
printing new X-Men.
Well, that's the big thing
So
too.
to have someone there
Yeah.
that could keep those fans.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing too. That's really interesting too. Is like the initial run of X-Men. And this is kind of crazy to think about, considering how huge X-Men is now, being like one of the major tentpoles of Marvel, right? But like, it's crazy to think about that too. That X-Men prior to this wasn't overly that successful. There's a reason why it stopped for a while, and then why it had this big resurgence versus things that we now consider smaller than the X-Men, at least before the movies came out, of like, Avengers not having any breaks, or Hulk, or, different Avengers members there, or Spider-Man, obviously, too, right? But obviously, I think he's still the
Mhm.
biggest part. But, point being, though, is
Yes.
like, this is the big part of X-Men is back now, full new team, and it's so cool here to see where, like, so many of these characters that are huge now, because more of these characters than not are still really relevant to X-Men today, that like anybody that really just knows generally X-Men knows these characters, right? We have
Yeah.
Nightcrawler here. This is when Wolverine's brought in the team. We have Colossus, Storm. Like, these are huge characters that are brought in here, and it was just really neat seeing them all brought together in this way. And like, you're right, there are situations of them each being brought together, wonderfully done, and then seeing them all go on that mission together and then fight Krakoa. Cool. It was a cool first mission. And what's also interesting too is, for anybody that knows the more current X-Men comics, they have this, which is dubbed as the Krakoa era, that's almost about to end, or coming to its end very soon. Is the whole thing of that is like they have a sanctuary on the island of Krakoa. So it's so interesting to see how different Krakoa began versus where it is now. Um, so yeah, just really cool though. Just
Is
seeing
the
where it all
island
began.
still a living? Is the
Yeah.
island still a living mutant in the new? Okay.
Yes. It's still technically one giant mutant. So.
So at some point it came back from outer space and
So
maybe didn't hold that much of a grudge.
yeah, I don't know the full details on how it happened. It's definitely a very unique um era that from what I read I liked, but I don't know how it goes later on. So anyway,
Which
yeah.
was your favorite of the recruitment scenes? Like whose recruitment scene? Nightcrawlers, Wolverines, Storms, Colossuses, Sunfire, and Proudstar. Uh, which of which of those uh, did you enjoy best?
That's a very good question. All right, I'm gonna get this out of the way first. For anybody that doesn't know, um, Wolverine is my favorite Marvel hero. So he always had. I have a personal bias towards absolutely everything Wolverine does in any of these issues because I love Wolverine. Um, so that's up there. Now I don't know if that's my favorite though. I think actually the standout one for me, honestly, might be Storm's, because it's so interesting to see where Storm came from, how she was considered like a goddess there. It was very fascinating to see that. Uh,
Yeah.
Storm would be my pick. Um, runner up
All
though,
right. We.
Colos. Oh my God, Colossus was the runner up there though. Seeing him being that like
Oh wow.
working guy there, and he has such a he has a more unique situation of like his dilemma with having to join the X-Men. So those are my two picks.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we see here how he's let me get to it exactly here, but we see how he's more of like a family guy in a sense, working on
Hmm.
the his family's like, no, don't leave us, but he's like, I'll be back to help you all do that. Like, we didn't see that strong family connection because all the other mutants are like, a lot of their families are like, how dare you're a mutant, we don't want you to be part of this, versus Bossus actually
Exactly.
has to leave an accepting family here. And he's such an important
Yeah,
part to his
you're
family
right.
too, because he's the guy that does all the farm work here when his parents are older, so it's such a harder decision for him to leave here.
Exactly. I was I was thinking of that too. I was like, this is mm, like Xavier taking him away from his family, who, as you said, loves and supports him and knows he's a mutant,
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps even other members of the community too.
Right.
Uh, but y- you know, you're right. He's doing the heavy lifting here. Who uh, they don't. I don't know how wealthy their family is. Probably not very. Uh, and as you said, his parents are older. This is going to be a big strain on them. So I would hope Mister can just private jet all around the world, has a huge mansion, would send some money his parents' way,
Mm-hmm.
as like, s- to help him out. That'd be nice.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but yeah, I mean, you're also really right that he's the one person here who, while sure he doesn't really know like how to use his powers, well, obviously he can use them, but
Mm-hmm.
he's the one person that isn't alone because, yeah, Nightcrawler ostracized, labeled as a freak, chased, and Wolverine, even though he's been working with this military unit, he's very much an antisocial person.
Right.
uh, and Storm, I don't really know about her family, but as you said, she's been labeled as, and she has willingly taken the title of a goddess. And
Yes.
so that is definitely being set apart from everyone else. And I really loved, where is that here? I really loved uh, Xavier's line. Well, as I agree, that was my favorite as well. Storms was my favorite as well, because uh, he, he tells her, uh, he's like, you have a land and people who adore you. I feel a world and people who may fear you, hate you, but people who need you nonetheless. The world I offer is not beautiful, but it is real, far more real than the fantasy you're living now. I really think that it's an interesting idea that she's kind of trapped herself within this fantasy, possibly because she's afraid.
Absolutely. That's definitely what really stood out. Like, big part of what stood out to me there is just like, wow, Xavier, how you change her perspective on this and gets her to join. Absolutely. And it was just
Yeah.
so cool to see how they all came together.
Overall, I have my feelings about Xavier, uh, beyond this story, and how I think he's kind of manipulative, and I have some issues with him running a military operation under the guise of school. But uh, here I thought, eh, he's using words and reason to, and good reasons, to convince these people to come with him. Uh, not overall, not in a way that is, manipulating them for his own purposes. And uh, overall, I do think, yeah, overall, his reasons I mean, we know why he came to get them, so he could save the other X-Men, but all of them, other than Colossus, all of them do need to find a home and to control their powers, and Xavier's offering that.
Yeah.
The one oddity, in my opinion, was Sunfire. I have no idea who this guy is.
Me neither.
And obviously, he's been in the comics before. But what I found really odd was Xavier didn't have to convince him. Xavier just shows up, barely says anything, and the guy says, "Okay, I'm going with you." And then 2 seconds later, this is the guy that is like, "Why are we here? You're trying my patience," and just doesn't want to be there. And I'm like, "You took the least convincing. What's your problem?"
Yeah. It didn't last long,
Anyways.
but we'll get into that later. But yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, I think that does it really well for this first issue here. Unless you have anything else you want to bring up.
About Giant Size X-Men as a whole?
Yeah.
I mean, one funny thing, at least for me, I'm sorry, I'm looking through the panels here. When they go to Krakoa, the new team, when they go to Krakoa and they land, they all split up. They're all like, "Okay, we gotta search, and we gotta search the entire island. So let's split up to the north and the south and the east and the west." And then they all go to the same exact place, this temple,
Right.
and act like they were going to meet there in the first place. Because whenever any one of them shows up, they're all like, "Oh, well, Storm, Colossus, glad you made it in one piece." Blah 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 blah. It was just kind of weird and funny.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it was a good adventure.
Yeah.
Oh, I did want to say one more thing.
Okay.
About the original group of mutants. Who is Lorna? Who is the woman with the magnetic powers? I have no idea who she. I'm a fan of X-Men. I haven't read many of the comics, but animated TV show, all the movies. Like, who the heck is she?
Are you talking about the where her name is Polaris? Is that who you're talking about, or are you talking about someone else?
Later in one of the later issues, she calls herself Polaris. But here, what is her name?
I'll just say I'm not that familiar with her either. There's a lot of X-Men characters I don't know that well. Big reason why I wanted to do the series.
She's like, I know all the others. I know Angel, I know Iceman, I know Beast, I know all those people. Well, Beast wasn't here. I'll say that. Sorry, I forgot. But I have no idea who she is. I've never heard about her before.
If anyone knows, comment down
So
below.
I feel slightly bad for her that, she's one of the original X-Men, and I have no idea who she is.
Oh well. Oh well. All right, well, we'll just move along then to now what Chris Claremont writes here. And that begins with Uncanny X-Men 94, where indeed Chris Claremont writes here. Len Wein was actually a plotter and editor with this, though. Dave Cockrum continued to do the art. Bob McLeod is the inker. That's think I met him last month. Um,
Oh,
that name looks very familiar there. I believe I met him last month. And then Phil Rachelson was the colorist along with Tom. Oh my God, that's a last name that I can't say. Or is it Chowowski? Is the letter? That's one heck of a last name. All right. Anyway, it's titled "The Doomsmith Scenario," where we see the original X-Men leave, as they feel that they kind of have a place there after the new group moves in here. Cyclops decides to stay to lead the new team. The new team then starts to bond and train together. You know, the danger room as we know it, right? But then they get a call saying Valhalla has gotten taken over and a nuclear war could start if they don't get it back. So
that'd be bad. Well,
very
they
bad.
called the Avengers first, but they weren't answering.
That's true. Avengers were busy doing other things. Remember, Avengers were the bigger team at this time. So, but yes, the X-Men then fly over. Their aircraft thing just gets zapped, just destroying it. That leaves them all falling to their death, and that's where the issue ends. Definitely more of an issue that I feel like kind of just set up. Okay, this is the new team together. That starts learning how to be a team, right? We did see him be a team last issue, but this is their first time where we really saw him try to be a team together. Like learning how this is how we be a team, right? So,
Except for Sunfire.
Except
He's
for
like,
Sunfire.
I'm out.
Sunfire, very important detail there. He's like, I'm out of here. I did my one thing that you want me to do, Xavier. Bye, because he thought it was just a one-time done deal, I guess. And so, but yeah, all the others leave. I like this sort of moment where Cyclops is like, but what do I do? You know, he's like, do I stay here to lead? Do I go be with my true love, Jean? And obviously he stays. He leads. He starts making him train. You know, he's doing what he does best at being a team leader here. So, but yeah, I think it was a really good issue to just sort of begin further set up, I should say, this sort of new team, right? Getting more of that foundation of a team, being a team here. I think that's the most important thing. Because by the time you get to, I mean, while there was a page to set up page or two of the bad guy here, what's his name, Count Nefaria taking over this Valhalla base, that was as much. Like, that was maybe like a third of the issue is all this Valhalla stuff. It's more about the team and them having to reorganize here, essentially. So, but I think it was a good beginning issue for Claremont here to write. It's just more of like a foundation after Giant Size X-Men. So, what did you think?
Well, you know, for these issues that we read, they basically did 2-issue arcs. You
Kind
know,
of, yes.
Yeah, it was very, very much, definitely very much felt like just wanting to get to, as you said, get to know the new team before getting into, well, they definitely set up a lot. But before getting into, like, you know, the much bigger arcs that we'll be going into later, you know, the Phoenix Saga and Days of Future Past, you know. So these were all kind of like the plots of a few of them were kind of throwaway. But yeah, as you said, there was this character exploration. And so for these 2 issues dealing with the Count Nefaria, is that his name?
Yes,
who is from, at least from reading this, who is a previous villain that the X-Men have dealt with before. And they did that a couple times here, so I think that was another way to kind of be all like, hey, we have this new team, but hey, we still have all this old stuff we're not forgetting about, to that fans will remember.
Right.
But I thought these two issues with this Nefaria plot were the weakest of all the issues, at least in my opinion, at least plot wise. But
Maybe I could maybe agree with that, but go on.
but as you said, there was it was definitely more about. I don't think the new team got too much focus here, but it was, yeah, definitely about the old team leaving,
Right.
and Cyclops's dilemma of whether or not to stay. And I think Cyclops he's an interesting character, and he kind of views this, he says that his main reasoning for not leaving is that he can't exist out in the human world without them knowing, at least humans knowing he's a mutant, which I don't know, he can wear the sunglasses out there. I mean, I think Angel has a bigger problem with the giant wings.
Just a bit.
Has to wear a trench coat all the time. But I think it's more about his role in the X-Men is, the leader, and his dedication to that role. I think it's way more about that he feels he can't leave because of, partly about the expectations of Xavier. I think Xavier, has, brought him up and
Yeah.
trained him to be the leader of the X-Men.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So I think while it's a heavy burden that he carries, it's also a responsibility that he can't leave behind.
It's something that he very much takes to heart, and we'll be digging into that more a bit later. But yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
One thing that I did want to mention about the new team, I'm not sure exactly where it is here, but it's basically about John Proudstar, and how they've given him the code name Thunderbird. And that kind of bothered me, actually, because it's not a name he chose. And, he comes from the Native American people whose, land was stolen, their culture suppressed and demolished over the years. And I mean, I know there wasn't like malicious intent behind this, but it's just, optics, and especially, looking at it from perspective of today, you know, taking someone's name away from them. Not taking away, but they make a point to say, no, we're calling you Thunderbird, instead of Proudstar. And so I think, over these couple issues where he keeps calling Cyclops One Eye instead of Bicyclops, I think that was his rebellious, he's like, well, if you're not going to call me by my name, I'm not going to call you by your name,
Right.
type of thing. So I found that interesting here.
Yeah, I didn't think too much of that, but I can definitely see where you're coming from there. Wait, I don't have too much on this issue particular. Because as you said, it's very much like a part 1 to a 2-part arc, right? And so, here, I'll just go ahead and get into like what the rest of this is, and we can finish up our thoughts on these issues in particular. where in issue 95, we're seeing X-Men, they're falling to their death, but hey, we know that there's flying X-Men that can help save them, so, they, all the ones that fly save the ones that can't. And so, but, Nightcrawler then goes in, unlocks the door so they can all get in, and so then the X-Men all enter, and they fight these characters called the Ani-Men. We saw them last issue take over the base, led by Count Nefaria here, but we see them have the big battle against the Ani-Men here. We see Cyclops is just barely able to stop the system from firing all those nuclear missiles, and then we see Nefaria escapes while Cyclops is doing his thing here. And however, this Thunderbird character you're just talking about, he makes this valiant effort to get on the plane and then try to stop it, which he does. However, he sacrifices himself so Nefaria doesn't get away, and we're just left there, and that's just how it ends here. It ends with Thunderbird sacrificing himself here, which is interesting too. I think that's an interesting point I want to bring up too. That is, this issue on the front of it, it says something like an X-Men dies in this, and this is interesting, right? Because this is only 2 issues in of Claremont's run. In addition, this is only 3 of, or only the 3rd part overall of what is this new team of X-Men. Does this death feel too soon to you? Did it feel, was it fitting? What was your thoughts on it?
I'm not sure it felt too. I mean, it did feel too soon, but also I think that was the point. I think that it was the point to hit home that this is not an easy life, and at least this writer is not messing around.
Sure.
I mean, I have some issues in the way it happened. I have some issues in who it was, but yeah, I think I think that was definitely the point. And Cyclops ends the issue, by saying, I suppose it had to happen sometime. Hell, sooner or later, it happens to all of us in this business. It comes with the uniform.
Yes.
Although I think later he does say that this is the first time it has happened with an X-Men, the first time he's lost someone like this. What about you? What did you think? Too soon?
I definitely got that vibe, right? Because it's like this is, like I said, the 2nd issue Claremont wrote, third issue with this team, and so like it definitely felt soon. But I can also appreciate, to the point you were just getting at, of, in a way, it can also set up stakes of no one's safe. Something that we don't often have in just the superhero genre, period, right? Like, no one ever really dies, seemingly. And, like, that's...
Well, they do, but they come back.
Exactly,
5
right?
times, at least.
Right, exactly. And so, now, I don't know if this is a character they've ever brought back, or if it's one that stayed dead. What? Did you say?
Me neither. I don't know.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I didn't. I mean, I'll say though, he's kind of that one guy that I like saw and I was like, what was he do again? Like every time. And so like he wasn't one that really hit home, but like at the same time, it would have been nice to have a couple more issues with him to make it be more impactful. But I see what your point is though. Although I think that point could have still applied if they like waited maybe a couple issues, right?
Yeah, maybe for the 100th issue or something. Yeah, for us to really connect more with his character, because unfortunately we didn't get that much.
Because I'll be honest, even after reading these issues with him, I still don't really understand, like, Okay, I know he's a Native American. I get his name is John Proudstar, but like, what does he do again?
What's his
What
powers?
does he really do? Because he didn't
I
really
don't
do
think they ever
anything,
said what his powers
right?
are.
He didn't really do anything. At least as far as power wise, right? Obviously, he did
Mhm.
important things here and there. You know, being part of the team there and helping them on Krakoa, and then he had his big moment here. But like, other than that, like he absolutely earned his place of he did things to be part of the team. We just don't know what specifically he used to get there. I think, but
Yeah.
that's just how
I
I feel.
mean, Xavier sought him out for a reason, There was other
Right.
mutants out there,
Yeah.
so why did he go to him? So,
Yeah.
but
So, but
so as you said at the beginning of the issue, not a hoax, not a dream, this issue in
right.
X-Men Dies, did you think it was going to be him or did you think it was going to be someone else? Obviously not one of the others that we know,
See,
but
that's the thing, right? Is just because I know where just some of X-Men goes, it's very easy deduction that he's probably the one, right? Because it's like,
I thought it was going to be Banshee.
like even then, I thought Banshee would still stick around, so that's how I was like, I don't think it's Banshee because I know Banshee's like quite a big character. I mean, not as big as some of the
I
others,
don't
but
know.
Still,
Yeah,
he's still a bigger character. I feel like, and so, um,
yeah, I don't know as
now,
much
now
about
I
him,
think it
but
could have been
yeah,
between him or what was his name, Sunspot, but then Sunspot left.
Sunfire.
Sunfire, thank you. So, because everyone else, right? Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, they're all huge. So, it would have been one of
Well,
those
I thought
two.
it was going to be, I thought it was going to be Banshee because at some point in the issue, he says, "Oh, I think I'm too old for this." So I thought, oh, okay,
I knew
they're
Banshee
gonna
had more stories,
get rid of
so,
him.
but that's
Okay.
just how I thought.
Well, we're looking at it obviously as we know they're not going to kill Cyclops, Storm,
Right,
or
right.
Wolverine, or Nightcrawler, or Colossus, because we know what that they keep going. Uh, but they actually spoil who is gonna get killed on the cover and on the previous cover because there's a little circle here that has all the faces of the X-Men that
Oh my god.
exist in these issues. He is not one of them, and he was not in that little icon in the previous thing either.
Huh. I never
So
actually noticed that. That is,
I didn't notice it till after reading, but yeah.
that's very true. Huh. Look at
Uh,
that. Look at that.
uh,
Yeah, very true. Well, only other point that I sort of have about this issue is what'd you think of the villain here of Count Nefarious and his Animen? I like the design of his Animen being these wacky animal-like humanoid things almost. I wasn't sure completely what they are, but I thought they were a cool threat for him to like fight against, visually at least. Um I mean, he definitely had the stakes there. It definitely felt like he was like a returning villain of sorts. I think probably because he felt like he was a villain set up before. So,
yeah, that's what they said.
um,
Uh,
so
I didn't really have much of an opinion
sure,
on him. As I said, I thought plot wise these were the two weakest
sure,
issues, and
I can see that.
uh, that was big part of him being part of that. I think that I mean I know that they teleported in past security, but still feel like a nuclear base would have a a lot more security and like codes that they'd have to get past to actually set this thing to shoot missiles and stuff. Uh, but
Fair enough.
yeah,
That's fair
uh,
enough.
but I have one thing that I thought was kind of dumb, and then I have one thing that connects with John. What happened with John Proudstar?
Go for it.
The thing I thought was dumb and also kind of a head scratcher, is, they've got this self-destruct missile launch countdown happening.
Mm-hmm.
Cyclops is trying to stop that from happening, although I don't think he's much of a computer whiz. They really shouldn't have let Beast go. And Xavier appears in his mind, and he's like, "Cyclops, what are you doing?"
That's
Well,
funny.
the thing, the bomb, the bad, the boom, and Xavier's like, "Dummy, it's out of commission. I did a mental scan of the system. It's all good. Now get over here. Proudstar needs you." Uh, that just kind of seemed like really odd. My dad often says, like, with some TV shows that are really, the episodic kind of TV shows that are not, there's not going to be a cliffhanger that leads into the next episode. So it's like, oh, I guess the writers looked at their watches and were like, oh, we got to wrap things up here. And that's kind of what it felt like here. And also, Xavier can scan computers with his mind. Hmm? Is that a thing?
I don't know.
And that's something I'll talk more about with a later issue.
Sure.
So that was just kind of a weird, kind of dumb thing.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
what was really good and in connection uh, with Xavier's powers is when Proudstar was killed, Xavier was with him. He was in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
So he was viewing it as though it was happening to him. And it says here, the scenario ends now as it began, with the breaking of Charles Xavier's heart and the twisting of his soul. For in the end, he could not desert his pupil, and all John Proudstar felt, Charles Xavier felt as well, with only one difference. Charles Xavier is still alive. I thought that was really powerful. As I said, I have some feelings about Xavier, and he and Cyclops kind of share a dual role in being like the leaders of the X-Men, and
Right.
uh, Cyclops is the one that's on the front lines with the team, making these life and death decisions that sometimes lead to one of his team members getting hurt or killed. And I was thinking before that the difference between them is kind of that Xavier, kind of has this distance between the rest of the team. Like, he kind of keeps himself a little more isolated, and
For sure.
I thought, maybe he doesn't, feel that, or doesn't want to feel having the lives of these people in his hands. But here, saying he couldn't abandon his pupil, even though he had known him for just a couple days, he still went with him to the very end, felt everything that he felt, all fear, possible fear and pain, and uh, it makes me think that he's always doing that, like that he's always, even when he's at home at the mansion, uh, and the X-Men are off risking their lives, that he's always with them. And uh, so I found that to be a really interesting character
Absolutely.
dilemma.
It's a very good point there. Very well said too. Um, I definitely think it helped add more impact to the moment of feeling like, oh, holy crap, this is happening, right? So,
Mhm.
um, that aspect I think is like written really well. Like I think the execution of it was written well, for sure, and that just added to it. So, but yeah, for sure, 100% agree there. Good. Um, yeah. Right. Well, dealing with Thunderbird's death, though, we'll move on to the next issue, issue 96 here, where we see Cyclops as he's having to cope with the loss of Thunderbird here. Just what a wonderful scene this was. I think this was like this really like hits home. I feel like of you're seeing just seeing Cyclops deal with all this internal dilemma, right? Because he's that person that wants to be the best team leader that he can be, but you know, people just naturally die when it comes to these sort of operations, right? And so it was really good seeing it. Execution here was just fantastic of seeing him deal with this, and I thought that was great here. But continuing onwards, we see the X-Men as they're continuing to train, further learn how to be a team. We're then going to cut to be introduced to this character called Stephen Lang, who's trying to get like his own anti-mutant project off the ground. More on him a bit later, but we then go back to the X-Mansion where there's this big sort of demon thing that attacks. They kind of, it's really cool, kind of like it's like one of my big moments here was like we see this one moment where Wolverine just absolutely goes at it, and you're like, yeah, Wolverine, you got him, and then he like kind of like seemed like as if it kind of like absorbed powers to become stronger or something like that, and so, but anyway, there's this way that it gets defeated of where it just then ceases to exist, and that's where the issue ends. I will say fantastic beginning of the issue, and of course important setup for what's to come later, but the demon was interesting. I feel like you got to see a bit of action from each of the X-Men. I didn't quite understand how it went away though.
Uh,
yeah,
Storm.
right, Storm did something there, but I love this moment too where Xavier goes into the creature's mind, right? And that was crazy too, because he was like, for a moment, he felt like he almost became the creature there or something like that. That was just, I just thought that was all really good. But then Storm was able to do something to be able to make it cease to exist. I honestly don't have that much thoughts on the issue beyond like I thought the beginning was great, but like the creature didn't really do anything to me, like for me, because like it's kind of just like, oh, it's a thing that attacks and they deal with it. Okay, cool. I don't feel like that really served anything overall, but beginning was fantastic with Cyclops, and that's such a huge moment that stood out to me out of all these issues. And yeah. What about you?
Well, you're right. This one actually was not part of a 2-issue
Right.
arc thing. As you said, it set up Stephen Lang, and he becomes a much bigger thing over the next few issues.
Right.
But yeah, the demon was kind of there and then gone, and that was it. But I don't know. I mean, I found the demon more interesting than the Count Nefaria thing. And I actually thought, well, I'm not sure I remember what I thought, but this actually kind of goes into Claremont's writing style. And that he uses the narrator boxes
Yeah.
to talk to the X-Men. they can't hear him, although it appears that Cyclops can hear him, like it's Cyclops' inner voice. But you know, so many comics like Spider-Man, the narrator boxes are, Spider-Man's inner thoughts.
Sure.
You know, uh, so but the narrator here is talking in the third person for all these things, and
Right.
so Claremont actually, writes it as though he's talking to them. He often poses questions, or or kind of laughs at them. Sometimes it's like, oh, not what you think was going to happen, was it, Cyclops? And uh, but here, see, I thought that at the beginning with Cyclops in the woods, that it was potentially the demon talking to him, getting into his head and making him, really feel all this guilt, especially here where it was saying, uh, you and the X-Men have saved the world from a nuclear holocaust, but you lost a man to do it, and try as you might, you can't balance those scales in your mind or in your heart. Can you, Cyclops? And he says, no. Can you? No. Can you? No. No. So I thought like it was like the demon getting into his head, but no, it's Claremont, and so it's kind of a really interesting quirk that I haven't really noticed as much in other comics that I've read.
Well, I feel like a big part of that's due to, like, if you have the speech bubbles of every kind of, or not speech bubbles, thought bubbles, I should say, right? Of each and every X-Men, it's, well, especially if you present it in the way that box is, right? Think about how many different color codes you have to make for each X-Men for who
Oh,
that
that's true.
represents, right? And especially when we've had this in modern comics where you can have, some of them have a very particular color to it, but they can also put like a symbol by it. So like, say, like, an Iron Man helmet symbol beside something sort of, say, orangish or reddish, right? To represent Iron Man sort of thing there, and then you could change it to like a Captain America symbol, right? But like, that's more than like what they just do here of just very basic speech boxes or thought boxes, narrative boxes, whatever you want to call them, right?
Mhm.
But so like, it makes sense to me why Claremont did it, but you definitely,
Well, Len Wein didn't do that though.
that's true.
At
He
least
didn't,
from what I noticed, it's
not
like
as much.
Len Wein just acted as the narrator, and
Sure.
whereas Claremont really writes as though he's talking to them. It's kind of funny.
It is really interesting in some cases though, like with where it's written. I like that writing style, but but in some spots it's definitely interesting. That's for sure. So,
Well, they
but
also in the woods here. I'm going to guess this is. Sorry, my camera's moving around a lot.
you're okay.
I'm gonna guess this is land that Xavier owns, and
I really hope so.
he just has a, yeah. I mean, property damage. Uh, he just has this demon obelisk on the property that he bought the land, and they were like, by the way, there's this weird obelisk in the woods. This is what the realtor was saying. There's this weird obelisk in the woods. That's gonna up the price a few $100,000, just so you know. He was like, okay, no problem. And he like never, like, I mean, I'm sure it's in this ancient language that maybe Beast was working to decipher, but it's just, I don't know, kind of funny. Uh, but I actually really liked the demon, especially, he says that, I'm sorry, he's a child of the Nagari, a child of the elder gods who once ruled this earth of yours. So yeah, I was actually
Interesting.
hoping you would know more about them because uh, they sound cool. And I think, I mean, they said we haven't seen the last of them. I think this was another instance of these issues, kind of setting up a lot more to come in the future issues.
Be interesting if they ever visit more of that. I'm trying to find what they were called. Nagari? I'm trying to find
Yeah,
where that's said.
N''Garai. Nagari. So
Yeah, I know nothing. There's definitely going to be more of them coming up later though. So,
maybe
maybe, um, not in these, but
one
hopefully
other.
later on as we
Uh,
go. We'll see. Go on.
although when uh, when Xavier connects with the demon, doesn't that look? I'm not sure if you're looking at this page, but doesn't that look like what's the island's name? Krakoa?
Like in the
That kind of looks like
coming out of his head.
yeah, that kind of looks like Krakoa.
Yeah, a
So
little
I'm
bit.
wondering if there's a connection there.
Be very interesting.
Okay, two other things I just want to quickly mention about this issue. Uh, Moira McTaggart.
She was introduced, sort of like the housekeeper. Very interesting too, as we were trying to see this whole plot line too of like Banshee trying to get together with her, right? So that is
Yeah, I'm not
something
a
that
fan
does
of that, but
happen.
I mean, it kind of makes sense, He's from Ireland, she's from Scotland, so people seek people that are familiar, and
Sure.
kind of know the same lifestyle, and those two countries are, I mean,
Yeah.
they're right next to each other, so uh, but her running in with the machine gun, I just thought that was really cool.
That was
I liked that a
hilarious.
lot.
I thought that was just so funny. You know, my thought right there was like, why in the world is there a machine gun in this household? And then just to see
Well,
her come
not
across.
just a machine, there's an armory. That's what like she came running out of the armory.
Okay,
it says that on the door or wall or
sure.
whatever.
But like, you don't think about
Well,
the X Mansion having just a room full of guns like that.
no,
Nevertheless, your
because they all have
housekeeper,
powers.
exactly. But then you also just having this housekeeper just run up with a machine gun and just try to be like, I got this, where everyone else around her just has all these special superpowers. I found that part hilarious.
I think that would have been, Xavier's giving her the tour of the mansion. He's like, and here's the armory where we keep all our guns that are covered in dust because we all have superpowers. Here's the codes or the key, because why that stuff would not be under lock and key, I do not know. But yeah, that was just an awesome moment of her reign,
That's
and
so funny.
uh, I like her character in the newer movies, although she's not Scottish at all in the newer movies. But so I just since the other issue reminded me of Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse, I rewatched that, and not to get into that, but I really like that movie. It's a great movie. I don't know why people don't like it, but anyways, she seems more useful right here, and does more running in with a machine gun than she does in that movie. But that's also.
That's funny.
But one other thing, we're talking about setting up these new characters,
Sure.
and Overall, of the issues, I don't think they go that deep with the characters until one particular issue, which I'll talk about when we get there. But when Storm goes off to seal, I mean, they don't call it the obelisk, but that's what I'm gonna call it.
The
The
obelisk.
cairn? I don't know what that word is, but I'm
Ca-
gonna call it an
cairn?
obelisk. You know,
Sure.
yeah, this statue thing in the woods. Oh, I guess she had to destroy it. I thought she was just sealing it, but she blows the thing up. Okay, whatever. Anyways, there's a moment when she's being attacked by all those like shadow demons that she like has flashbacks of her childhood. Uh, they don't delve into what those flashbacks are about. You know, you see her as a child, and then you see her in a collapsed room, like the entire room is collapsed around her, and someone's arm, probably her mother's, because she's holding the hand of someone in one panel, and that arm has these bracelets. And then in the panel where the room is collapsed and you see Storm or Aurora unconscious here, but there's an arm coming into the panel that is covered in blood, and that arm has those same bracelets. So she's like having this terrifying flashback during this, and so, you know, again, they don't go into what exactly that is, but I just found it very intriguing here. And as well as, I'm wondering if that has anything to do, like that flashback with her in that room with everything, you know, crumbling around her, has anything to do with her claustrophobia. Storm, I don't know if you know, but Storm has claustrophobia. And it's something hinted at in this previous page where she's flying off to go destroy the cairn or the obelisk, and she says the night wind is a welcome caress on her bare skin as she soars high and away into the midnight sky. She is free now of houses, walls, people, of the cages mankind builds to lock himself into, free and happy and alive. So there was some good Storm stuff going on here. Good
Absolutely.
character insights.
Absolutely. Getting pieces to a larger mystery. Being closer to revealed, so yeah, we'll definitely see where this goes. Very good insights on this issue for sure. Gonna be cool to see where more of this goes. But that's it for this issue, right?
I'm good.
You're good? All right, cool. I just don't want to double check because I'm gonna call this an end to part 1 of the beginnings of Chris Claremont's X-Men here. Check out the next video where we're gonna be covering doing the next set of the issues here, and keep an eye out for it, part 2, where we cover the rest of the issues connected here. See you all later. Bye. Thank you for watching this video. Before you go, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video. See you next time, here on the Dingus Den.